a couple things. One, I was going to go through. Now, in the past, I have shown people these pages that I do that show a whole bunch of different ways in which you can draw an eye using different mark making tools. And I'll be going through that tomorrow, and really playing off the idea of how many different ways can we interpret the same thing. And so I want to talk about that. But another thing I wanted to show you was I got a little bit of mail over the holidays that I'll switch that out. I got a little bit of mail over the holidays, and within said mail, move this. I got Dee Dee sent me a whole wackadoo pile of. She said she thought I needed some new papers for backgrounds. Always appreciated. Always appreciated. Very much appreciated, Dee Dee. And so it's this wonderful pile of different tissue papers with material on them, and pattern papers. I'll move these. And then there's some printed patterns on here, and music sheets, and different, it's almost like a wallpaper or like a wrapping paper. You know, lots of different opportunities, and it's all very tissuey, right? Lots of different opportunities to utilize these in compositions. And so I'm really excited about that, and I'm really appreciative to Dee Dee for sending these things. It's very nice of her. And yeah, of course, we can always utilize different surfaces to work on. You know, I'm just going to set these here for a moment. Sorry, my voice and my throat are still coming back, so please bear with me. I apologize. We did a stamp swap last year, and I took part in that with people. And so a bunch of stamped pieces came in, and I really enjoy. And then clips, little cutout clips of things. And I have yet to engage these in any pages. I've utilized some of them in a couple of things, but I really enjoy these different surfaces, and I want to incorporate some of those into some pages. Mixed media. Yes, sir. Corbin wants to say hi. You want to say hi? I guess not. Okay. Mixed media to me has always been about throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks. So anyways, I've got an entire other envelope of these, but really love this stuff. And so I'm going to get more of it engaged in the work. And in addition to that, we've got some that I've been doing myself with patterns and surfaces and different materials, and papers and the like. So mixed media to me is about just taking whatever opportunities that we have for assembling constructing our visual images. And there's no real hang-ups to me on that. And that includes going from traditional and into digital. There's of course, that's a mixed media aspect to that, because you're using two completely devices in order to produce something. And now you're hold on a second, you got to see this. Can you see them? This is what I'm working with here, folks. Now you're not in camera again. This climbing all over me. This is 2024 right here. I got to be in the center of everything. That's fine. Okay. So the other thing that I tend to want to showcase for folks is pay attention to the man behind the curtain. All of these different surfaces, like jelly plated surfaces that we put together. And mine aren't very good, but those are the starts of pages and stories. Whenever you're using page as an underlayment for when you're gessoing something or priming something, and the areas that are covered on the paper around those, well, there's still something in that for me. I'll still use that. This is Slap and Dragon, where you throw some ink or watercolor down and then drag it across the surface. And I picked up one of these this year, which is just a card for pulling. What? It's a card for pulling material across, and looking forward to that. utilizing that a little more. These are brayer off pages, so where you try to clear off your brayer roller and with the paint on it from your jelly plating. So you'll get these textures like this. But to me, this is a great thing to draw on in reverse. Wow, that's an interesting one, switching letters around. So that you draw, and I've shown this, and I'll show this some more, about drawing the negative lines, drawing the volumes as opposed to the linear elements. You know, when we tend to draw, we tend to illustrate specifically in cartoonists and sequentially for, you know, comic books and the like, you tend to draw the linear elements. And what you don't think enough about, or a lot of people don't think enough about until we get to that point where we know we need to, is the volume and the form and not just the outside lines of shapes, but we need to think about how that corresponds to volume. And so when I draw in reverse, it tends to be focusing on the volume as opposed to the linear element. Chris says that looks like a ship in the mist. Does it? Is it that one? Or is it? Oh, this one. Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? A Viking longship or a floating. I can't remember the name of it. It's like a shop that serves noodles, a little boat that serves noodles that, you know, floating in the sky like in the Fifth Element. So this is just some more of these modulated surfaces on different cardstocks. And I tried some of that stamping because I did a lino cut page recently. Little stamps that my granddaughter put on a page for me. Brayer off. This is just primed card stock, you know, and then we get into all the different colors and cardstocks that we can use for illustrating on. So I'm just trying to sort of walk through the start of the year here. There's so many different ways that we can approach our storytelling, and there's so many different ways that we can utilize materials for putting together our images. And still operating under the auspices that if anybody wants to suggest a one-page story or 3 prompt words or however you feel that you want to try to compel me to do something, not interested in doing scripts and stuff like that. Sorry, I always feel like I have to say that because I've still had a few. Here's my script. I'm not drawing your whole book. You know, that's why you hire me, anyways. So if you've got some suggestions, some prompt ideas, by all means, put them in the comments, put them in the chat, put them in the comments for the video or for any of the social media posts that I do. So this is a cold press, and I want to tell you about this part too. Cold press, now my camera's not going to pick it up. Cold press has a bumpy surface on the paper, okay? And hot press paper has a smooth surface on the paper. And you can have hot press on one side and cold press on the other. You can have both sides, one, you know, hot or both sides cold. Excuse me. But there's interesting things that we can do with either one of those. But the cold press stuff, and it includes things like watercolor papers and the like, that there's that little texture to the surface of the paper, and it's going to have that granulation that can insert into your work. But there's a bunch of possibilities of that because of the porous. It feels far more porous. It's just a case of experimenting and seeing how things come together. Now, one of the things I tend to do is that I'll take something like a matte medium and I'll affix materials down to the surface. Like this is a couple of, this is a stack of Post-its that I have here. And I'll take Post-its, and I'll roughly fold or serrate them like this. And then I'll attach these pieces of Post-it randomly throughout a piece of paper in order to just sort of give an underlayer of different values peeking in to the composition before I've even sat down to build that up any further. Other things that we can use for that is the lecture set that I've exampled during streams in the last year, and I'll be using some more of these here, or we can do little clear overlays on acetate. This is from the side of a book that had the cover had fallen apart, the wraparound, right? And it was the exact same as the interior cover, so I'm like, I'm going to cut that up. And then there's different kinds of cardstocks and pieces of paper that we can also take and tear down and incorporate these elements into our compositions. So I'm a big fan of advocating that people experiment that and play with it a little further. This is like a little travel kit of what I just showed you of Post-its and papers for if I'm working out in the field, out hither and yon. And in addition to that, allow yourself opportunities like, if you've got different types of paper that you come across, this is all these little dots on it for graphing. Or here's a nice, really heavy black cardstock, like a really thick one. Little watercolor sheets, medium-sized watercolor canvases. And so here's an example of what I'm talking about modifying the surface. So this is just a piece of watercolor. And this is just a piece of canvas, I'm sorry, for utilizing for watercolors or small acrylic works on the go. And so what I've done to it, there's a Post-it here, there's a piece of paper here. I've got medium on here. I've just got acrylic washed and watered around there. But what this serves as an example for to me is something that's just ready to go. If I feel like illustrating a story on top, I'm prepared to do so. So if you've got the opportunity to experiment and play with this, in my mind, now in a lot of other people's minds, that might be, well, that's just the way to go. But in my mind, that's a great first step. And so what I mean by that is the abstract composition and the balance that we were looking for and how we're assembling a composition and how we are putting together the values, that there's a nice balance and weight in those. And that's great when you're doing an abstract work or any kind of composition relating to those with these simple elements, but without any additional flourish to it. But when I want to utilize this as the foundation for a story that I'm working on, which is what I traditionally do, is that to me this is just surface. The playing around and monkeying around, it all started because for me, I hate working. I grew up poor, and so a lot of I would make do with whatever surfaces I found for drawing on. And so I would do drawings on newspaper, and I do drawings on typewriter paper, typewriter computer paper, I guess now, and printer paper. And used to be able to get rolls, cast off rolls from the newspaper company in the city so that you could roll that out and draw on those, I hate making mistakes, and there's that whole thing about when you're a young creator or when you're really getting into creativity, whatever, young at heart, that you want to throw out the mistakes. And I say don't. And the reason I say don't is that necessity for me proved to be the mother of invention by not having really the allowance to be able to throw out the papers because I really don't have anything else to work on. I started trying to figure out ways in order to facilitate continued drawing or painting or whatever thing I had to get out of my system on whatever this surface is and however it had already been mistakenly modified. So that's why I'll utilize things like I've got masking tape set up, I've got different stencils and things like that over here. And the reason I have all of this available to me is that in my mind, anything goes. The reason that I use this, and I got a couple of questions of, are you using that? This is, if I don't know if you've bought onions before, but the bag that onions come in, I have in a whole bunch of different pieces of art. So, so I'll medium that down into the surface as well, just like I will with tape or Post-its or whatever else. So anything goes, and anything goes in the building up of not just the image in and of itself, but the surface that you're going to build up. Like I say, envelopes, as well, because there's all kinds of different colors and fun things that you get in envelopes that you might not otherwise. And this is what I'm referring to when I say I'll save up stencils and when I find these little things like this, because there's just fun patterns that you can incorporate into stuff. So, whatever works, whatever comes together, and you just feel like incorporating in. I'm a big fan of that, and so I'm always going to advocate for folks to give that a try. So thank you to Dee for sending the different kinds of tissue papers and the like to me recently. I appreciate that. And thank you to everybody for the well wishes over the holidays. And but let's get making some moo-moo here. Why not? So let's just get cracking. And so one of the things that we can do in our laying out of our images, I don't want you to worry about the marks that you're going to make on your surface, right? Because all of the illustrating that you're doing is exploratory until you get to your finished image. And this is going to be something we're going to talk about more in depth tomorrow when I'm showing you all the different ways that you can draw an eye in different material and different medium. But when you're drawing, and if you get overly concerned about something, about, I'm going to mess up my drawing, just do that. And the reason I say just do that, which might come off as crazy for some, is because it doesn't matter. This monkeying around with the surface, like I just told you a few minutes ago with these other implementations that we have for positive and negative application, we can take things off as much as we can put things down. So if you're going to get overly worried with that, then do something like that for yourself. Just monkey up the surface, okay? And so we're just going to get right into drawing a random silly face. And the reason for that is that I think that any story, any narrative, and any composition comes out of just getting started. So that's where we're going with this. And I'm doing it really loose and really fast with some quick marks. And we're just following the shapes. Don't think about lines. Think about the shapes that we're putting down and how that combination of shapes tells us something. In this case, it's telling us here's a face, and it's a surprised face. We'll raise the eyebrow ridge, and we'll get, as we go along, we can get into seeing a face and how we break it down and all of those basic things. But there's a million places we can get those basic things, and that's part of the fun journey for you, is to explore that as you go along. Excuse me. Why did he do that? Why did he? So then we can come in as well. Where is he? It's Derwin, the new member of our family. Happy little Derwin. Coming in and cutting out shapes and space. Positive and negative applications into our surface, right? So I don't know how well you can see that. I'll pull that up. But we're starting to get some fun, different bits of line coming through here now as we're drawing our guy who's going to have our big introductory reaction to our narrative. And so we're going to put a silly face in. And I'll use another darker pencil in just a second. But let's put his eyepieces in here. Let's put his glasses in and cut across. Cut across his face like this. And so you can see some of the scribble is still coming through. Is that in? Am I in frame? I just gotta make sure I'm in frame. So you can see some of this initial scribbling that I did is still coming through. It's okay. We're not worried about it. It means nothing to us other than the allowance of letting us just get invested in the page without any hang up. But there's these scribbles in the eye. What's all this business about? There's a really fun artist that I would recommend people take a look at. Her name is Eleeza, Eliza. There's more to her name than that, but that's the part I can remember, and that's the part that gets you through a search. But she does these elegant, fluid, gestural lines in all of her work, and it starts with this. Another person who does that is Karl Kropinski, and where he'll just rough scribble a figure together and then put cleanup lines for the whole thing, and then just eventually erase off the original initial pencil work. So, whatever works for you is my point. So we've got our surprised look, and the surprised look is all about where the eyes are in the face, right? So I'm going to come in now. This is just a black pencil crayon, but I'm going to highlight certain parts of the face, just give them little punches and build up those areas. And it's a nice little emphasis points so that draws you specifically the places in the composition that I want your eye to initially go. And it really emphasizes now that emotion I'm trying to convey in the ooh face. Do it with me. Ooh. So while I've really only used pencil and pencil crayon here, this is where I can come in with things like the ink, or with, this is a fountain pen with black ink and Uli pen. I really enjoy these. We can incorporate some pencil crayon elements in there as we go. Different types of pencil crayons, different softnesses to them, or nice sharp black marker. Okay, all kinds of different stuff that we can do, but we're just starting here. Okay, so we've got, where was I? I'm just putting in his face. So emphasis points in the face. And so try things out. And again, shapes. You're putting in shapes more than you're putting in lines. The rest of it builds up as we go. Okay? But when you leave these little elements, like the scribbles and any errata that you might put down, like, oh, that mark's not right, leave it. Leave it if you need to. Yolanda's leaving. She's got to go visit her mom. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Yolanda. Thanks for popping in. Yeah, have a fun time with mom. Chris is grabbing some lunch. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Okay, so as we're drawing in this raised brow, and then there'll be the hairline as we go. Okay, but we want to express a little more in that forehead. Put a couple more marks and lines across there. And I'm just softening these lines. So this is a Mastercraft pencil. It's for doing construction with and marking wood as you're about to cut it. I think it's a fun tool for drawing. It works like a HB, 2B within there. And, for me, it's just the right lead I want for just scribbling around with. Now, I'm going to get in. I'm just going to throw some more marks and shapes into the eyes for some light and some reflection from the glasses that he's wearing. And then we'll get into the lower part of the face and at least get this character done to start our page off with. Welcome to Canada land, eh? So if you're when I'm using source, I tend to use really tiny images, like I'll pull up a page and And here's a whole bunch of different images, and you can see how small they are. And so by having a small source image to work from, it forces you to think more about the structure of the thing that you're drawing and how that thing works, and you're not looking at all the tiny details, and you're not getting hung up in all of the little parts of the composition and how does this work. No, just let it go. Open yourself up to just taking this simplistic, simple representation that you've got to utilize as a source thing, because you're not overly dependent on that. You're drawing. You're not a printer, a photocopier, so you're not trying to just replicate an existing image. And if you can do that for yourself, you'll find it liberates yourself, that, it doesn't look exactly like the horse I'm looking at. Well, why should it? It's a drawing. So our face that we're drawing here doesn't look like the guy. But it looks like a guy, and we get across the conveyance of, ideally, his emotion, and we can utilize it for our storytelling so that it tells our reader what we want them to know in order to motivate them into the next panel and into the narrative itself. So I hope that makes sense for folks. If anybody has questions about stuff, just let me know. Just feel free to ask, and we'll do what we can do. All right, so little wingtips. I like my hair always feathers out of the side, so I tend to draw people whose hair feathers out of the side when my hair is volume. I got respectable for the holidays here. All right, so we're going to give them pursed lips, which follows with the drawn cheeks. So do this with your face. If it helps you in illustrating a face to motivate yourself by manipulating your own face, what do I look like? What does that make me feel when I try to have the same expression? And so because of that, you'll feel the lines that stretch in your face. You'll feel the muscles that move around. You look silly as can be, but come on. You didn't get into storytelling because it's so stylish, and all the kids walk through the streets going, I wish I looked like a storyteller. Gary Hodges today told me I look priestly, so who knows what you're going to look like in comparison to the greater whole. All right, so pursing the size of this mouth, and hopefully that comes across as, the expression that I'm trying to exhibit here for our reader. And then I'm going to soften this area, these cheeks here, and push these marks around like I've done up here on the forehead. And we're going to get back to our Mr. Derwent here in a moment, and shape some lines out of the value that's down throughout the cheeks. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Because sometimes putting marks down, like we've done here, and then taking an eraser and pulling some value back up, gives us interesting shapes in the face that we might not have had otherwise. And so that little contrast of the different values, the darker, the lighter parts, lets you really play with the dynamics in the face. And it works in the same way as I talked about before, positive and negative marks, right? Now, ideally, with the composition that's got a lot of this pencil work on it, you're going to want to fix it, or you're going to want to be very gentle around it so you don't smudge it like crazy, because you've taken that time to put that little extra effort in for those things. So let's put a couple more marks down. So anyways, it was really nice everybody coming out today. If anybody's got stuff that they're working on, Chris, I believe, is coloring, I think it was Chris that said this, coloring dragons through 2024 because it is the year of the dragons. I guess that would be in the Chinese calendar, maybe, or different calendars. Anybody knows that, let me know. Is anybody working on anything specific now they want to tell others about? Spread the word. Okay, so here's our principal character. We've given him some volume in his neck. The wonderful diversity of all of us is that we're not all the same size. Okay, so now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to come in and I've got this white ink, okay? I'm going to shake it up for just a quick second. Now, as much as I've got this black pencil that I'm going to be putting some highlights in with, I've got this white ink that I'm going to be doing the same thing with and cutting some highlights back out of it again with it. So, white ink with a white brush. Anyways, so again, we're looking at these heavy contrasts, right? So as I've got these marks that I'm putting through, and as we're putting some of these value shifts down inside of here, one of the things that we can also do is take this white and really carve out the white around his eye. A little reflection of light within the eye to give it a little bit of volume. Just to make sure that that emphasis stays there. Can you see that? I know it's not very clear. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so the white itself is now got this emphasis added to it by utilizing just a combination of this black pencil crayon and that white ink as it pinches inside there in those little areas. So it's sort of, this is where the mixed media part comes into play, and it gives us some liberty in the marks that we put down because there's a soft edge on the brush hits with the white. It gives a nice soft value, a nice little soft form in the reflections in the eye. And those lines that we initially put down that we're so concerned about, we've made a mess of our drawing. This is where you can go over those. And they just become more interesting elements within your composition as you do a light application over top. But now there's more depth, ideally. We're getting a little bit more depth and range in our image because we've got tints and shades, contrasting volumes or values, I'm sorry. So put some of these additional marks through here, and you can see this little separation start to take shape. Not just the ones that we erased out with the Derwent, but now just fun shapes within the form itself. To me, this is always a fun way to go about the drawing process, is that it's not always just putting the dark marks down and hoping you make the right ones. It's allowing yourself to take the light marks out, in equal measure. It's Hoffman used to talk about the push and pull of color. Hans Hoffman, teacher of the Abstract School of New York. In the 1950s, he would talk about the push and pull of color and the push and pull of value. How volume in your composition and different values of signs to said volumes changes their prominence in a landscape, changes their prominence in a composition. Big section of yellow is equal to a small section of blue. Just how weight works. And the same thing goes with lights and dark values. The deeper that you put a mark, the more it tends to, in the reader's eye, push back that surface. And the lighter that you put a mark down in the reader's eye, it tends to think of them as that surface having more proximity or raised value to it. And so, something to experiment with, something to play with, and to have some fun with. And then the way you put those marks down, and where you put the pressure, so that you've got your sharp glasses edges here, and then these soft values in the forehead. Play with that and experiment with that, have some fun with it. And in doing so, you'll engage in more interesting compositions, more interesting application of the marks that you're making in your compositions. So there's more pressure than I put down for that little circular little lip in the forehead than in the soft shading that I did of the hair. And now I'm going in with more surface and a sharper edge on the pencil. And I turn the pencil around and keep that sharp edge. I'm pulling back that hair. Because hair isn't just a continuous mass. It's not just one volume of, block of value. There's depth to it. And so if you're going to allow yourself, put a lighter application in and put some emphasis points into that. And then like in here, I can come and I can pick out little bits. So it's about having fun. A little reflection in the eye gives just a little more emotion to it. And put a little bit of shape into the face here. Like so. That raised eye from the brow up above, just like we have over here. Right? And now it starts to tie in together because these fields of value are working together now. And we'll pull those little marks back up with soft little pinches of light. I hope this makes sense for folks. I hope this is interesting and helps you out. And just different ways of throwing some marks down together. And then for us, our tool bag is a piece of graphite, a piece of black pencil crayon, and some white ink. Oh, and I'm sorry. And let's count this tool as well, erasing out sections as well. So that's what we've got going on together here so far. Now, it's not to say that we can't do some fun and interesting things, like this is a traveling toothbrush. I wouldn't recommend using this for your teeth once you started using this in your studio. But if I take this toothbrush and I'm going to, within the lid of the ink that I have here, get some white on the tips of the bristles. And as I flick that over top of the composition, it gives this friscoing value. And I'll show you this in a second. It makes a mess of your finger. But you can see now this airbrushy kind of a texture of white over top of that dark hair. And so the simplest tools can give us so many different marks. So here's our silly person who's welcoming us to Canada Land, for implementing the start of the narrative for our story and from our suggestion. So this is our guide who's greeting us and welcoming us through the entrance of Canada Land. And Thank you, Yasmin, for the funny Canadiana suggestion here. So I'm just going to sharpen this guy up a little bit. And a nice little point to it. There we go. And so we'll just come through, and I'm not doing complete lines across here. And the reason that I don't do that is that I'll put these emphasis points, because that's not how our eye works. We don't see continuous lines around faces and stuff. So when we're illustrating and we're wondering, you know, how can we get to a more realistic illustration of our character when we're drawing it? The drawing is dead on the money. But what's keeping it still feeling a little artificial? It's the fact that you're drawing a continuous line, looking at it as a linear subject. And that's going to keep you from fulfilling your objective. Now, I could pencil crayon right over top of these lines that we made earlier and leave them in there. I like that. I like doing things like that. You can do the same technique also with a black ink or a black watercolor within the same drawing, and that. It's yours to explore and experiment with. So, you know, don't be too concerned about how you go about it. Just play. And the image itself, well, I'm having fun just drawing a mixed media image and stretching my legs in ways that I haven't done over the holidays because it was laid up there. But the image doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you know, the next illustration I draw of the same character can be a very cartoon, simplified form of the same character. And there's no rules to say that I can't do that, or that you can't do that, or anybody else for that matter, because the rules are set by the creator. And, you know, if we decide to turn left, we're going to decide to turn left. Ideally, you don't want to just continually turn left, and every different panel is going to be different, you know, drawing style, and every different thing is going to be a completely different story. You want the reader to be able to, your storytelling, you want your reader, your audience, to be able to understand where you're going in a narrative, where you're going with your story. And so the more complicated that you make it for your own whimsy is detrimental to the storytelling aspect. And so a lot of people do say, well, it's how I meant it to be. How I meant it to be, again, only works insofar as the person across from you getting something from that. And if they don't, it didn't work. So those how I meant it to be's didn't work in your favor. But it doesn't have to be a perfect image, and it doesn't have to be, you know, the same exacting application of style across a composition. You can make those changes as you go. You can turn back again. But again, there's got to be some principal understanding of the storytelling involved. So if you can keep that in mind, you should be golden. Try whatever it is that you want to do and have some fun doing it. Put marks in, take marks out. Miriam asks, how do you, I'm sorry if I think I'm caught up. I am caught up, okay. How do you decide where to put shadows that give a depth to the drawing? Well, when you think of the face, and this is just the face as our example. This could be the same for a dump truck. This could be the same for the cup that I'm holding. Excuse to get a drink. It could be the same as this toothbrush. It could be the same as anything that you see. When we think of something, we don't think of it as. When you look at this pencil here, and you see the pencil on the surface, it just looks like this rectangular shape with the point at the top. But when you look a little deeper, you might see a little bit of cast shadow on this side, depending on how the camera's picking it up. See if I can get that cast shadow someplace. Not so lucky. Well, I tried to fix the lighting, that's why. To eliminate cast shadows. So let me see this, so you can see the shadow with my fingers. Let's look at that then. So I'm not just thinking about the hand as I'm drawing it, or in this, well, let's go back to the pencil as I'm drawing it, but I'm thinking about its volume. It's got this volume because it's casting these shadows. So in addition to casting the shadows, there's a refraction of light. There's a little white line that runs along the top of the pencil, which is in response to the light that's above it. Whatever it is that we're looking at, whether it's a hand, whether it's a face, whether it's a dump truck, whatever it is, we know it's not just a flat surface, is my point. We know that there's raised areas like the brow ridge, like the tip of the nose. We know that there's recessed areas, like when we get into these little areas underneath our eyes, these little baggy areas that don't capture light as well as the space above them, because we know that the eye pushes out from the surface of the face. So the nostrils being deeper, they're going to have some shade to it. So when you look at it in a sense of opposites, so we put, as we're putting our marks down, think about the darkest parts and the lightest parts. So when you're playing with shadows, build them up gently, like you saw at the start where I was doing these gray tones, and then now I've moved right into these deeper, the application of the blacks and the whites. And so build those up for yourself, explore those and pull those up from the surface. And then, so I did this light mark underneath the chin earlier that I know is a little bit deeper as I go through the drawing because of underneath the lip, the purse of the lip, there's going to be a cast shadow there because the light is coming from a surface in that direction. Or, I'm sorry, if the light is coming from the sun in that direction onto the surface here. And so this lip sticking out is going to cast a shadow underneath it. But in that dramatic intensity as I have in this composition, there's going to be even a little bit more in there, which because it's that recessive point where the part of the face goes in. So if you're drawing a face, explore your face. Rembrandt drew numerous portraits of himself. Albrecht Dürer did portraits of himself. He actually put himself as Jesus. But these artists over time have done, Leonardo has a number of examinations of faces. And in our understanding of those faces and how flesh sits on bone and sags over time and more volume in our face. I'm a large person, so because I'm 6.5 feet tall, I have more volume in my face. I'm not very thin. I'm very blockish. I'm built like a gorilla. So with my face it's more broad, but your face, whoever is engaging in the stream today, your face might be more gaunt than mine, and so you'll see a little more of the bone, and not that your bone is protruding through your face, but that you can see your cheekbones a little more clearly, and they're not as soft and rounded as mine are. But the more that you explore the face and look at the different planes of a face, it should tell you where shadows go. And it's the same as anything else. The more that you do it, the more that you follow along with it. That you don't have to keep looking at a subject, or you don't have to keep assessing where shadows go and where volumes go, because you just know, because you've been playing with your own face enough, you've been studying your faces enough, or any other objects for that matter. And it's just having fun, just playing, and allow yourself to go back and to scope things out with these different tools that you have, and to make these different marks that, this smudges so much better than the pencil crayon does. So I'm going to come in here and smudge some marks in there and play with those values. But it's just working at it over time and building it up, so that if I'd started with the heavy black value at the beginning on the white surface, then the pressure would be to show all of those emphasis points, like the eyes, the glasses. I did this part and I did this part, but I never did this little connecting aspect to it. I did this line under here and a heavier line up the side, because you learn over time that our eye fills in those differences. So as we're drawing a face with a whole bunch of different planes on it, it starts to develop as a nature inside of you, like where you want marks to start and where you want marks to end. So we started this by scribbling on the paper, and like I said before, the scribbles in the face now, they really don't matter. They're just another piece of texture in my mind. There's a scribble right there in that forehead, but who cares? We've also got these abstract white flecks of value in the hair over here, these spots of white in there. It's your drawing. There's no right, no wrong way to do it, other than the direction that you're taking it, the exploration that you're doing in it.